I'm Dr. Nicole Lipkin, and this is the HeyKiddo podcast where we talk about all things parenting. And today I am speaking with Madelaine Weiss about parental burnout and everything that goes hand in hand with that. Madelaine is incredible. She's a Harvard-trained licensed psychotherapist and a mindset expert with an MBA and a board certification in executive career and life coaching. She is the best-selling author of Getting to Great, 5-Step Strategy for Work and Life, and the forthcoming What's Your Story? Building Your Best Adventures in School and Life, a personal development workbook for kids and the people who love them. Madelaine, I am so excited to speak with you today about a topic very near and dear to my heart, parental burnout. So good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here. And I'm excited to tell you that forthcoming is now. It's
Yay!
live. Yes,
it's live. It's live. Congratulations.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble and all of that. You know, finally it's here.
That's awesome. It's such a big accomplishment. That is amazing. That is amazing.
It was never in my plan to do a kid's book. And I'm sure as we go along talking today, we'll get to how that evolved.
Well, tell me, how did it evolve?
Okay, so I was, and there's a story about how I got interested in helping adults to thrive in work and life. And in doing that work, so many of my clients would say to me, how come no one ever taught me any of this when I was younger? It would have really saved me from hitting the wall a few times along the way.
Yeah.
And then there was, in working with my clients, a lot of them, I think because they see the MBA and the executive coaching and all of that, they'll come present with their work. But ultimately, since everything is connected to everything else anyway, we'll talk about their parenting and their marriages. And other things. And in talking with them about their parenting, I would notice that there's this little secret tweak, like a little hack, that makes all the difference in the world. And I thought, you know, I have to do one for kids too. And I have a going on 8-year-old granddaughter who I've bounced. So she's on her little name is on the cover of the book, who I was bouncing things off of to make sure that I was doing it in a way that the kids could relate to. She was great to work with.
That's awesome. And actually, I mean, you just teased me a little bit. You said there's a tweak. Are you willing to share the tweak?
Yeah. So maybe you know this one. It's Dr. Dan Siegel, who wrote The Whole Brain Child, I think was the name of it. He also has the hand model of the brain, which we can get into. But what I'm referring to specifically here is well-meaning parents instinctively, when their child is struggling with, it doesn't matter what, want to, as quickly and directly as they can, make the kid feel better. And what they do when the kid is, and I'm going to oversimplify right brain, left brain here. When the kid is in a right brain meltdown, right brain emotional meltdown, the parent's instinct is to go my left brain to the child's right brain to present some logic. And I can give you an example of this. Please. So there's a young mother. She works for the Treasury. She travels a lot. And every time she would have to leave, her little boy would have a meltdown that she was leaving. She told me, and she said, you know, and I would say to him, Mommy is coming back. It's only going to be a few days. Daddy is going to be here. You have so much fun with Daddy. And she presented all these logical reasons
why it's okay.
why he should not feel what he's feeling, which I see in my adults. The impact of that aspect of parenting is crippling to some. So what we did was we tried something that I was taught in my training. This isn't just for parenting. This is for marriages. This is for coworkers.
Sure.
This is for everything. Instead of going to the fix, the logical fix, you go directly right brain to right brain. Yeah. So I see and hear that you're feeling whatever it is, and that you're worried that it'll feel too long, and whatever it was that he said to her, she would repeat back to him, affirming. And I said, when I was training as a mediator, they wanted us to repeat back. And I would say to them, I'm not doing that. That is the most inauthentic thing I ever heard of. I am definitely not doing that. And they said, okay, fine. Well, then in your little training dyad, we'll have the other person do that to you first. And you'll see what that feels like to be the recipient of that. And I got to tell you, it was so calming.
Yeah.
It feels like a warm bath and a big hug when someone repeats back to you what you have said. So it's very simple, but it's not like intuitively, instinctively what first comes to mind. So anyway, right?
Sure.
So if the parent goes right brain to right brain by repeating back what the child has said, then the child can move, because when they're in the meltdown, they're not really hearing what you're saying anyway. And
of course,
they can't use. So the end of that story is that when she started doing that with him, he got to the point, which makes me laugh. He got to the point where he was saying to her, go already.
Get out of here. Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah. I mean, I think, facts don't fix feelings. Feelings evolve feelings. And but
beautifully said. So it's right brain to right brain.
To right brain.
Before left. Right.
Absolutely.
To right before you go left.
Absolutely. I love that. Let's talk. And I think, again, much easier said than done.
Yes.
It's really hard in the moment.
Easier said than done until
you practice
enough. You've practiced it enough that it becomes your habitual.
Exactly. What I love that you said is that this is not just for parenting. This is for working with others. This is for just living as human beings in this world, and humans to humans, and how we communicate with one another and how we relate to one another. It's so true. I want to shift to parental burnout. I can't remember which report came out recently, but talking about parents in the US and the level of stress and how critical it is. Like we're code red right now.
And all general.
Surgeon General reported
public health issue.
So let's talk about parental burnout and your perspective on parental burnout, what it is, how it comes about, all the good stuff.
Okay, so I always look for, you can tell already, I think, like something really little and simple that can make a really big difference. I pulled a definition from psychological science of parental burnout: an intense exhaustion that leads parents to feel detached from their children and unsure of their parenting abilities. I don't think that encompasses enough. I think yes, and more to it is, I think it gets to the point where the batteries are so low that there's no confidence in one's abilities to do anything.
Yeah.
And so it really, every role hat the person will put on, that they don't feel that they're fulfilling. So like when you're at work, and apparently 75% of working parents say that their child's mental health is their primary concern. So that tells you that when they're at work, 75%-ish is not thinking about work. And then that affects work. And we're not stupid. We know when we're not measuring up. We can feel that. So then when they go home to their kids, they go home to their kids as someone who feels that they weren't up to snuff, performing well at work. In fact, there's a client that I was working with yesterday who said, and she is now, she just had a baby, she just bought a new house, they're moving, she has a new job, and she's feeling the full depletion of
Yeah.
the energy of it all. And she told me that her boss asked to speak to her and asked if she was happy with her work and wondered if she wanted to consider, hiring someone. So I said, have you talked with him at all about how you're feeling? She said, no. I said, so he's sort of smelling it, he
Yeah.
can,
Smelling and guessing.
yeah, he can kind of
Mhm.
tell that the energy doesn't feel right. And I want to tell you a reframing that we did with that, because I think this is really important for everyone. She rattled off a whole list of things that she could potentially do to restore herself. And it's different for everyone. And she said, I could be meditating, I could be working out, I could be journaling, there are all kinds of things that people can do. And she just mentioned, she said, but there's something about it. It feels so selfish.
Mm.
And I really landed on that with
Yeah.
her. It feels selfish because we call it, self-care. Right there, it feels like it's all about you. And she knows she has all these people counting on her. She's got a husband counting on her. She's got a kid counting on her. She's got this boss counting on her. A lot of people are counting on her well-being.
Mhm.
And she feels to take any of these moments for herself. How could she do that with all these people counting on her? And all I could think and say was, how could you not? And when
Mm.
you use that airplane analogy, you know how you have to put the
Yeah,
mask
the
on?
oxygen mask on 1st. Mhm.
Because otherwise you're either fainted or dead on the floor and you're no good
Yeah.
to anyone. So
Yeah.
it's like, how could you not put that mask on your face for all these people who are
Mhm.
counting? So it like completely flip-flopped.
Yeah.
That it
Yep.
wasn't selfish. It was something, it was an obligation. It was her right
Yeah.
and her responsibility. It was an obligation to all
Yep.
these people who she
Mhm.
signed on with to keep herself well.
Yeah, it's interesting because when, I've talked about this with others on the show around parent burnout. One of the things that we know psychologically speaking that has such a deep implication on whether someone's feeling burnt out is their expectations of how they perceive themselves, how they feel they should be showing up as a parent versus how they do. And none of us, our expectations are so rigid. Our expectations are so often out of line with reality because they're psychological tools. And none of us show up the way we expect ourselves to show up at any given moment. And I always find it I
Why
always
did you say that?
why did I say what?
You said none of us show up the way.
None of us can consistently show up the way we expect ourselves to show up on a day in, day out basis. What I'm saying is that when we have a child, we might form expectations of what we're going to be like as a parent. And those expectations, the expectations that we have of ourselves and others are often rigid, even though everything in life is constantly evolving and constantly, like, for example, I'll give you an example. I always talk about this, the expectations when we go on a diet or when we start a new fitness regimen or when we start a new meditation routine or whatever it might be, all these well-being self-care steps. And then we all of a sudden don't do it one day or don't do it to the extent that we expected ourselves to do it. We have the piece of bread or we eat the sugar or we do whatever it might be. All of a sudden, we might start trash talking ourselves, or if someone else doesn't meet our expectations that we have for them, we might
So we
start
don't
trash
have to do
talking
that.
them. I think one of the things is we need to reevaluate what our expectations are and not have them be so rigid. But go
I
ahead.
have a
Sorry.
thing that I
Mhm.
think I made up. And if you heard
Mhm.
it somewhere else, please tell me, because I would love to know where it came from if it didn't come from me. But in any case, I call it this is exactly what you're talking about. I call it the misery gap. And the misery gap is the space between the way we think things ought to be and the way things
are.
And the bigger that space is, the more misery we create all by ourselves by having that gap. And a lot of those expectations were put there by the 5-year-old we used to be, who was no doubt cute and no doubt smart and really meant well by us, and kind of came up with this thing that sort of didn't work too badly, because don't forget, every single one of us has already survived everything we've ever been through. So we must have something going for us that helps us with that. It may be misused, it may be overused by us now as adults. But the idea is that as adults, we can diddle with that gap. And sometimes it's something in the external world that can be tweaked. And if you've tried to do that a couple of times, maybe it'll work. If you find you're banging your head against the wall, then it's probably something that needs to shift on the inside. But the goal is, as you know, to reduce that gap so that your expectations are not so out of line. And then when there are people who have a very harsh voice because they think it's motivating, because they're afraid without it, they'll just go to bed and pull the covers over their head and do nothing. So mindfulness says that we let the voice come, but then we also let it go. We don't pick it up and chew on it like a dog with a bone. So even though everything you say is so common, it doesn't have to be carved in stone. Robert Wright in The Moral Animal was one of the very early evolutionary psychology books that I read. He talks about knobs and tunings. We humans all have the same knobs of human nature, but that we can tune them up and they turn this up a little and turn that down a little. And it's a way to think about it, how we can mess with ourselves in a good way to have a great life.
Absolutely. You've shared with me that you have some pretty interesting numbers to bring to life when we're talking about parental burnout. And I think, to normalize what's happening and to start kind of working toward a solution. What could you share some of those numbers?
Well, we did. So we said that 75% of parents hold their child's mental health. They're concerned about that. I can tell you that 94% of people report being stressed at work. Teacher burnout is the highest burnout among the professions, which surprised me. I didn't
Really?
Yeah. There are 120,000 work stress related deaths per year. My father was one of them,
I'm so sorry.
A long time ago, which is my why for the work that I do. You know, the little children's book, Madelaine. She was not afraid of mice. She loved winter, snow, and ice to the time. Madelaine just said poo poo, and so did I too many times to my dad. I was mouthy. So when he passed away, he was 42, suddenly of a stroke, and I was 15, because people didn't talk to their kids and listen to their kids as well as we're now learning to do. So I was pretty much left to my own head. And I figured, because I was so mouthy, that it was because of me. I stressed him, until one day at the cemetery, when I broke down with my mother about how all my fault it was. And she said, no, honey, it wasn't you, it was work. So I feel now, and again, 120,000 of those kinds of deaths per year in the US, 750,000 around the world. I'm like, if I can help one little boy or girl's mommy or daddy, or anybody at all for that matter, live a happier, healthier, prosperous, productive life, I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a powerful why. You know, Madeline, it's interesting. My dad also died at 42, um, and of a heart attack suddenly, and I
Oh,
was 12, and I was 19 when my mom died.
so sorry.
No, it's fine, and I'm sharing this with you because that's my why,
Yeah.
and and I actually did. I was lucky enough to grow up in a house. My parents were school teachers in the South Bronx. And although they were math and English teachers, what they cared about most was mental, social, and emotional health. And they would be the teachers that went in at 7 in the morning to eat breakfast with the kids. And they prioritized that with my brother and I at home. And I was one of the lucky few that grew up in a household where we could talk about anything. And that was prioritized over anything else. And I didn't realize how weird that was until I became a psychologist, and
Yeah.
how rare that was,
Yeah.
which is why, which was the vision behind Hey Kiddo, is that it shouldn't be rare. It should be something that's just natural and the most important thing in the world. So with that, how, you know, as a psychotherapist,
Thank you for sharing that.
yeah, and thank you for
Yeah.
sharing your why. I think this is like, you know, this is kind of what drives us to help people and be in the world that we are.
I don't know if you feel this, but because we were so helpless then, there's a part of me, if only I could have done something, would
Hmm.
have. Yeah. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
But I think this is interesting because I think, you know, when you talk about that, where your mom clarified things for you, that it wasn't about you, that it was about school, and it was, I mean, I'm sorry, it was about work. It sounds like that was like when you look at the work that you do now, how do you help people how do you help people shift into that communication, into dealing with the burnout they're feeling, into kind of finding acceptance with who they are and how they are? What's the work with that?
It takes us back to the beginning of this conversation. Many of their well-meaning parents
Yeah.
disconfirmed their feelings.
Hmm.
So our feelings,
Through the left brain.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because when you go left brain to right brain, you're basically saying, don't feel that, and here is why.
Right. Here's the logical explanation for it.
Yeah. And it's not evil. It's not mean. It's just anyway. So my adult clients, the emotions are your inner guidepost. And this is why on my website there's a little tab that has a free PDF for a power breathing exercise. And
Mm.
it's a 30-second mindset reset. And what that does,
Are you comfortable teaching us that breathing exercise? And we can also refer people to your website.
of course. So singers know all about it. It's diaphragmatic breathing.
Hmm.
I was talking to someone yesterday whose parents were voice teachers. Said it's not just, it is filling the belly. And I have
Hmm.
that in the PDF. He also said it protrudes the back, which I didn't know anything about. When we did it together, he's absolutely right. So this is a kind of breathing that you feel in your belly and also in the small of your back. It's in through the nose and also out through the nose rather than out through the mouth. It's, for me, the 30 seconds is about 3 luxurious breaths. Really
Okay.
nice, deep, beautiful breaths. And the key is the belly goes out. So you don't fill your lungs, especially anxious breathing is right.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We fill the
Hmm.
belly like a balloon. Are you trying that?
I'm trying it right now.
Everybody try that because somehow we've gotten out of the habit of doing that. I heard that babies
It's
do that.
hard. It's hard. It
It's
comes into the
hard.
lungs.
Anything that is not the way we always do it is hard until we start doing that a lot. And then that becomes the new habit and the new norm. So you got that now? Belly
Hmm.
out on the in breath, belly in on the out breath. So
Hmm.
let's fall still, feet if possible. Don't do this while you're driving. Thank you. feet on the ground, nice and flat, top of the head parallel with the sky, chin tucked in slightly. And then you're just going to begin breathing your 3 luxurious, beautiful breaths. Belly out on the in-breath, belly in on the out-breath. And when you're finished, come back into the room. What is so cool about that is, first of all, it's free, and anyone can do it anywhere, anytime, for any reason. You could be sitting eating around a conference table. Everybody's breathing anyway. So, right? So you just do a few of the, and you don't have to close your eyes, just rest your eyes. I call it the ATM way to happiness. The idea is to acknowledge the emotions. So first to say, I'm feeling this, and then to team up with the brain is how I say it for the kids. And then with your higher brain in charge, you can make a plan.
I love that. And I think there's 2 things I want to say. I think in our world today, with the shoulds, coulds, and woulds, we think of all the things we have to do and all the technology and all the actions we have to take. But the truth is we have all the tools inside of us. Breathing is so powerful. And your first step, acknowledging the feelings. There's so much science behind that. Just putting a label to what we're feeling, and also teaching children how to label their feelings. It is such a powerful thing to kind of when trying to naming and taming emotions. So it's, again, ultimately we have the tools.
I'm excited that you said that, because it is possible to have a great life, and that we have everything we need to get us there.
Absolutely. I mean, our mindset is really everything. I mean, I think when you think about mental health in general, I think a lot of us immediately think about mental disorder, versus the fact that mental health is really the thing that gets us out of bed in the morning. It's the thing that allows us to communicate with one another. It's the thing that allows us to get excited, to be innovative, to be creative. It's our brains, our brain health is what keeps us functioning. And such a huge component of that, beyond like the nutrition, the fitness, the relationships, sleep, is our mindset. And our mindset, how we feel about ourselves and the things around us, literally shape our ability to get up in the morning, our ability to communicate, our ability to interact, our interpersonal relationships, our innovation, our creativity, all of this stuff.
Everything you're saying, I don't think we collectively appreciate this 3-pound blob of tissue for what it is. I have a family member right now who's actually younger than I am, and she has severe dementia. And
so sorry.
Yeah, it's so incredibly heartbreaking, as well as such an incredible wake-up call. So I'm finding now, like every day, I'm like thanking the universe for the functioning of it, which I'm much more tuned into now than I ever was. Like I'll watch connections. Mindfulness is actually the practice of observing the mind. So I do that, and I see these connections that are made, and it's almost like psychedelic or something. It's like, wow, this is amazing.
It's everything. I have to be honest with you, like in my own journey in life, even as a psychologist, even though I know better, I have always paid more attention to the visible things, to the physical, to my physical health, even though I know better, than the invisible, my mental health. And have, always had that kind of power through, drive, like, until more recently, until I've gotten older and recognized the fragility of life, and I'm just going to be candid here. I think going through perimenopause, there it is. I think going through perimenopause, real fun, tons of fun. I think going through that and watching my mind and my body evolve, that I've really started to see that the power of my mindset, that I've really started to see that the change and how valuable and how it's everything. And I think we forget that. I think we don't pay, I think we've just over focused on the problems, not the beauty of
Precious.
the precious, and the beauty of intentionally being mindful, and intentionally being the power we have over how we think and its impact over how we feel, and therefore how we show up, and how we parent, how we work, how we relate. All of these beautiful, amazing things. We have so much more power in that than we think we do. And
the message to the kids, but also to the parents, is what you're saying is to be mindful of this very precious gift and to care for it in a way. Do you know that adult humans make 35,000 decisions a day? So the care and nurturing and maintenance of the mind that is making those decisions is like, what could be more important, and how great is it to teach kids that early on?
yes,
That
yes,
there is a brain.
yeah.
People sometimes ask me, by the way, so just in case any listeners are wondering, what's the difference between the brain and the mind? Scientists struggle with that, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
And a shorthand way to, again, to oversimplify is some people like, and this is in the book for kids, by the way,
Okay.
what some people like to conceive it as is that the brain is the hardware and the mind is the software.
I love that.
The mind is the programs that we create, that we live by. And my message to the kids and to the parents who love them is that to know that the mind is creating these stories for us to live in. And I'm going to give you more numbers right now.
Love the numbers.
Yeah. But to know that is to be able to make those stories better. And that's what this whole thing is about. The numbers are insane. This is unfathomable anyway, 6 times 70 million zeros, whatever that is.
Okay.
6 times 70 million zeros, bits of information in the universe. Out of that, the human senses send 11 million bits of information per second to the brain. Out of that, we're only getting 11 million. I mean, how many do you think, you don't really need to answer this, but we're even conscious of? Out of the 11 million, what do you think we even get to know about? 50 bits, 50 bits. So I always like to say to people, anybody who thinks they know anything is sorely mistaken. So what the brain does, and even Darwin said like 150 years ago, whatever it was, that humans don't like gaps. They want to know. So what we do, so we don't feel like crazy, is we fill in the blanks and we delete things and we modify things and we add things and we distort things. We do whatever we need to do to make something that feels like a coherent story.
Yeah.
Like a way to understand that feels like it makes enough sense that we can get through the day without feeling like we've lost our minds.
Yeah.
And when you know that it's a creation of the mind that you think is real, it's an eruption of the mind, then you get to get in there with those little hacks you like and tweak things and make it better.
Yeah, our brain's designed to be as efficient as possible, to get to A to Z as quickly as possible. But with that, we have to take shortcuts. And I think one of the first, I know the first truth about human nature is our minds lie. They have to. One of my favorite quotes is from Deepak Chopra. We have about 95,000 thoughts a day. And I'm sorry, we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. 95 are the same ones we had yesterday. It's like, because again, we're trying to be as efficient as possible. Like, again, it's very adaptive, but we're making stuff up.
Yes.
And that is very important. And that, coming full circle now, isn't that such a big contributor to parental burnout? Isn't that such? And our expectations and our coulds and our shoulds and our woulds and how we feel and all of that stuff. So I think you've talked about these nuggets throughout. But are there any more kind of easy tips to bring peace and prosperity to parents and to little people? Like your top 5 takeaways. Like what can we, like, for our listeners, what can they just kind of take away and really just the nuggets?
I'm going to give you one that has different
Great.
I studied Advaita Vedanta, Hindu tradition, for close to 25 years. And I found it so powerful, so simple and true that I actually did a training program when I was working at Harvard Medical School. And there was like standing room only for this program. It was a 4-week program. People were banging down the door to get in because the stuff was, again, it was so simple and so spot on. But through that study and practice, there's this one concept that I want to share. It's called good company. And good company is not just, although it is, the people you invite into your life, that we should be maybe a little more meticulous than we are of who we invite in our lives. But it's not just that. It's the music we listen to, it's the books we read, it's the food we eat. And for our purposes of this discussion, so importantly, it's the thoughts in our head. Like, are the thoughts that we allow to remain in our head of the finest quality? Are they good company? Now, we can't prevent them from coming, but we don't have to pick them up and, like I said, chew on them like a dog with a bone, because thoughts don't stay very long. They're very fleeting. So if we don't grab onto them and then make them worse sometimes, if we just let them come and then let them go like clouds in the sky, then we increase the purity and the quality of the internal environment, the company we keep inside our own heads. And I hope that both of those books teach that. Well, at least I meant for them to teach that to adults and their kids. I want to tell you also about a father who's a VP in finance for a big firm. And he did this book with the kid book with his kids. And he said he's catching his kids now when they get upset doing their little power breath from the book. But he said, I also want to tell you, I learned a lot myself. He said, now when I'm reacting instead of responding, the kids call me out on it, and they have this common language. And I can't tell you how much I admire your family for having created that kind of environment so early on.
I was lucky. I was very lucky. I was lucky. It's everything. And I love the concept of good company. That's very powerful. It's and speaking of narratives and the narratives it's very relatable. It's understandable. And I think those are the most powerful messages. I really appreciate that. Just moved
It's a really
me.
old message.
It's an old message, right? That's what's so cool. Sometimes
they had these beautiful truths. I sometimes think that our minds are so cluttered with junk now. I don't know if this is true or not, and I would have no way to know if this is true or not, but I imagine that the earlier days minds back in these ancient times didn't have as much junk in them. I don't know if that's true or not true, but that
feels true.
That's why they come up with these pearls of wisdom that are just timeless.
I mean, obviously I was younger. I feel like my brain was less cluttered in the 80s. I mean, I don't know. I feel like there was less clutter before. I think many of us feel this way. I think the technology boom has been incredible, but it's also the constant access to stuff and information. You're saying, like, the good company, the things we read, what we surround ourselves with. I mean, the influx of information is pretty pretty overwhelming. It doesn't mean our brains have evolved yet to be able to take that in.
Can you imagine what the world would be like if every single person took it upon themselves to take really good care of this instrument that we all,
Incredible.
and people shy away, like my client, because they think it's selfish. But if we understood that it's our gift to the world
Yeah.
to bring the very best of us to the world,
Right.
like, wow.
We have a responsibility, actually, like you told the first client story you were talking about. It's our obligation, it's a responsibility, it's our gift. You know, Madelaine, can you tell us where we can find all your stuff, your good stuff?
I have it all in one place. So
Yay.
so it's on my website, which is madeleineWeiss.com. All my social links are there. The 2 books, the icons of the books are there. So if you click on them, you can get right to the books. I have hundreds of blog posts. If you click the blog, and there's a little search bar. So if someone has a topic, they can put a topic in and pull up. And the power breathing, I hope, like I always say, if you take nothing else, take that.
Love it.
Take
So
it.
that, and I think good company. I love it. We're going to take those.
Yeah, that. And also I want people to know that I offer a complimentary, a free strategy session if anyone is interested.
Wonderful. It was a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for being on the Hey Kiddo podcast. And I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Hey Kiddo. If you like what you hear, give us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Learn more about Hey Kiddo at our website, hey-kiddo.com. Have a question for our experts? Email us at hello@hey-kiddo.com.